Everyone, welcome to my FPL presentation comparing all 20 goalkeepers so you can have all the knowledge you need to compare and find out who's going to be your star man in between the sticks this upcoming 2022-23 FPL season. So let's get into it. First of all, we'll start by comparing our 5.5 million options. And if we compare Edison, Alisson, and Hugo Lloris, we can see that the goals conceded per 90, Edison is ranking superior here. Overall, Alisson looks to be a great shout, with his points last season being higher, his clean sheet percentage, and then in the black is stats containing data up to the last 3 Premier League seasons to give yourself more of an idea of what the consistency looks like. And per 38 games played, Alisson is averaged just shy of 170 points, which is an excellent return. His points per 38 game played per million is 30.87, which will become more applicable when comparing to some other goalkeepers at the other price points. Bearing in mind that it's harder for a more expensive goalkeeper in general to be as good value per million. Average clean sheets per game, Edison does pip it, but between comparing these three, it really looks like Alisson is your guy when, the other factors like fixtures are similar. If we look at our 5 million options, we've got quite a lot here. So, let's get into it. Let's start by eliminating some of the riffraff. When you look at Fabianski, Schmeichel, De Gea, we see these numbers like 7th places, 8th, 6th, 6th, 8th, 6th. They're not game beaters. They're not killers. We don't really want them, let's face it. Now, looking onto a couple options who might have some promise, we've got Mendy. Of course, last season, particularly before the end, because Chelsea did drop off a bit towards the end of last season, but Chelsea, they were defensively sound. Obviously, they're in a little more disarray. Their pre-season hasn't gone too well, and they did drop off towards the back end of last season. So some of these exquisite kind of tallies, especially considering Mendy hasn't been playing the last 3 seasons for Chelsea, so there is less data to form these stats here. But if he can keep it up, this is very, very respectable tallies, especially when you consider that he's 5 million. However, of course, Ramsdale, not too shabby, with the goals conceded per 90 last season, the clean sheet percentage, second best out of all these, and then looking for some consistency, pretty standard. But if you back the Arteta project and want them to, kick on again this season and back them to do it, not necessarily to be overlooked. Good old Ramsdale. Popey. Now, he's been FPL royalty. We've seen some seasons when he's delivered great points tallies, picking up the save points, getting bonus points here and there, getting a respectable amount of clean sheets. And this really shows that when we look at the past few seasons, he's averaged 160 points per 38 games played. That's great. And the value here of 31.84 is only beaten by Martinez, who, you look at that and there's some great points totals here. So there's some keepers that, worth adding to your shortlist. Mendy, Ramsdale, Pope, and, potentially Martinez, particularly if you back, Gerrard to kick on as a manager and really take them to great heights. Of course, Sarr, Schmeichel, Fabianski and De Gea, it does, it looks like you could do better. And then if we compare the value with the 32.36, we can see that does beat Alisson's 30.87. But the 30.87 still beats a good chunk, all these keepers here. So it just really goes to show how respectable that is by Alisson. So big up to the lad. Looking at our 4.5 million options, again, Raya. Now, there's a lot of talk in the FPL community about Raya, and you can really see why. Now, I've believe he was injured for some of last season, hence why he didn't play. So, which is why he's only 5th for points last season. But his goals conceded per 90 he was first for. His clean sheet percentage he was second for. And then this, if we extrapolate to a 38 game season, he'd have got 150.4 points expected if he played each game last season, which is very good. And the value, with him being a 4.5 million keeper, 33.42. That's better than Martinez, better than Alisson, you know. However, one thing I'd like to throw out there is it is worth considering about that was Brentford's first season back in the Premier League. Now, some teams can suffer from a second season syndrome. Now, could that happen to Brentford? Possibly, you know, but you can see why a lot of people are backing the boy Raya. Sanchez, solid, but from looking at this data here, I wouldn't say anything special. Not in my opinion, anyway. Gaeta, now he's aging out, so I think Johnstone's going to be their new keeper. Obviously, he was West Brom's keeper, and I think he did okay with them. West Brom didn't; they got relegated, but you know he bashed out some saves. I think he did all right, and he's an upgrade on Gaeta, especially with him aging. So, you know, if you back him, potentially that could be your boy. Now, Melier, a bit mid. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Pickford, that really doesn't make for pretty reading. And McCarthy, I think these 3 boys you can kind of toss to the side. Now, as we will have a look shortly, Melier actually has exquisite fixtures. It's just a shame that Leeds are very, very dog, especially in defence. Like, leaky Leeds. Come on. So let's just do some final comparisons of the points per 38 games played per million. And we can see that Raya stacks up very well if he can match last season's efforts. Bearing in mind that it is easier, though, for the cheaper options to be more value per million just with how it works out. Martinez, now last season he did a bit mid. I mean, 8 for points, that's not pretty, I'm not going to lie to you. But if we look here, Ramsdale, not too shabby. I'd argue you could potentially do better, but if you back him to kick on and improve on last season and do even more, you know, that's fair play if you want to do that. I do think Alisson's got some good potential. Because that, for a 5.5 million option, it's a very good points per million. Now, if we go on, a point I'd like to make about the promoted teams. Now, this is a big point here that I believe in. Because here, what we can see is the last 7 seasons, we have looked at the best performing promoted goalkeeper. And if you look at these points tallies, they're very good. And if we look at a promoted keeper coming up, like these are 4.5 million keepers, because promoted keepers, they're not priced high. And they're doing a madness, man. Like, even if they were more expensive than 4.5 million, these are still very good points tallies. And this is enough of a trend to say that we can pretty much confidently assume that at least one of the promoted keepers coming up this season is going to have a good point scoring season. Obviously, Raya would have been higher overall because he still has good points per game, but I believe, with injury was the reason. He didn't play all the season. That's why. So looking at our promoted teams to discuss which keeper could it be that has this great points total for a cheap price of 4.5 million and ultimately smashes great value. Now, I believe that this will be Nottingham Forest. Now, points per game last season is 3rd overall. Of course, they did come up through the playoffs. However, they did have a shaky start to last season in the Championship, and certainly towards the back end of last season, they really clicked into gear, and that's demonstrated here by the points per game. The second half of last season is better than Bournemouth and Fulham, and the goals conceded in the second half is better. And then even overall, the goals conceded is, in the middle, still better than Fulham. And when you look at it, thinking that Nottingham Forest, a historic club, and they're coming back to the Premier League for a first time, I believe, in my opinion, from when we saw Sheffield United come up. Of course, it'd been ages since they'd been in, and they gave it a real good go. And it was actually Dean Henderson, Nottingham Forest keeper, who was in between the sticks in their debut season, or debut season for a while, I guess not technically debut season, and he got 160 points. And so we've taken all these stats, trends, and into account. I believe you can clip this up, you can do whatever. Dean Henderson is going to have a terrific season. He's going to kill it. He's going to smash it. He's going to do it excellent. And then you'll look back at this and you'll think, wow, Dean Henderson, you've done well. But of course, fixtures. Fixtures also need taken into account. Now, it's a big part of the game. Jumping on the fixture trends and all that, what have you. Now, I have compiled my own fixture difficulty ratings, and I've done this by using data from the average goals that each team has scored at their home ground in their away ground per game on average in the last 2 seasons. So, for example, Man City's got 2.66 goals scored at home per match. So, this will be used to make up for like defensive fixture difficulty. So, if a team is going away at Man City, then that fixture has a 2.66 rating, which is red, and it's hard, and it's not nice. And I've done that for these teams. And for the promoted ones, I multiplied it by some kind of factor which accounts for the drop off from goals scored in the Championship to the Premiership, with obviously the Premier League being, it's the top flight. It's tougher. We can't have Fulham being predicted to score 100 goals in the Premier League. It's just ludicrous. However, with Fulham being high flyers last year, they actually are a red fixture, they are at home. Fulham at home is a red fixture, which, you may be thinking is Liverpool quaking in their boots at Mitrovic. Probably not, but, the maths will math, and this is what it's mathed up. Now, if we look at this, we can see Man City and Liverpool have excellent fixtures, let's not beat around the bush. Now, the one thing with Dean Henderson is 14th for Nottingham Forest fixtures, and if we look at them here, it's not great, it could be better. I still might go with Dean Henderson just because save points are a real thing, and especially for the lower table goalkeepers, save points make up a big part of their tally. Like, it can be like a third of their overall tally. And then, of course, when one of these keepers does pull out a road clean sheet, they can really get a haul, and you never know exactly when that's going to come in. Of course, easier fixtures, we do want that, but I do back Dean Henderson, so I might still stick him in my game week 1 team regardless. Of course, looking at some other ones, Martinez, Aston Villa, which are here, they have all right fixtures. So if you looked before at a Martinez, if you think he can get back from this drop off last season, and you want a bit of a differential, Martinez could be your guy. He's not the mainstream guy, but going off this data, he could be an interesting differential if you wanted one between the sticks. Of course, Pope and Newcastle have all right fixtures. Arsenal, Chelsea, and Newcastle. Well, Newcastle do have a bit better fixtures than them. Arsenal and Chelsea are pretty comparable, so I guess that's who'd you back more. Chelsea, in a bit of disarray, or Ramsdale with the Arteta project. I mean, that seems like a bit of bias, in that assessment, but it's your opinion at the end of the day. And look for all these tables, which will be on our Instagram when that gets created, at the FPL Good Guys Instagram. But that'll be in the description at some point. And yeah, thank you for watching this presentation, and I believe there's some real valuable in here for you. So to sum up, Alisson, with Liverpool having great fixtures here, good value, and he does traditionally get quite a lot of points. So if you wanted a more premium goalkeeper, Alisson does look to be your guy. Obviously, the trade-off with that is you might not be able to go for a Diaz or Robertson, as he does take up one of your Liverpool slots. But if you were Alisson in or Edison in, Alisson does seem like your guy. If you wanted a 5 mil option, Mendy and Ramsdale's fixtures, according to my math, seem pretty similar. So I guess it's whichever team you back more. Yeah. And then a differential option could be Martinez. Villa have all right fixtures, and if you back him to bounce back, he could be your guy. Raya, if you don't think they'll have a second season syndrome. And I quite like the look of Dean Henderson. But then there's also Pope. Newcastle, of course, improved defensively a lot towards the end of last season. They've got some defensive reinforcements over the summer transfer window. And Pope has been FBL royalty in the past, so you could see how he might potentially do that again. So these are just some of the stats, some of the overview of some of these players, the comparisons, and it's really down to you to use your own brain to assess is this the guy for you, But I've just thought I'd deliver some value for you here, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one or in our next podcast. Because catch us on the podcast too, the FBL Good Guys podcast with BV, Joe, and Dan, myself. Of course, I got 100k overall rank last season. BV got top 10k or 14k, and Joe got 33k. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.